The journey to Egypt stretches across sunlit desert sands. Moses and Aaron walk steadily toward the distant Nile, leaving the quiet of the wilderness behind. Ahead rises the grandeur of Egypt, towering temples, bustling cities, and the imposing palace of Pharaoh. The contrast is stark. Freedom meets power. Humility faces authority. Inside the palace, Moses speaks with calm conviction. "Let my people go," he declares, staff raised as a symbol of God's authority. But Pharaoh responds not with respect, but with disbelief and arrogance. He laughs, dismisses a claim, and challenges the God of Israel with chilling defiance. His anger soon escalates, and the mission that promised liberation becomes entangled with suffering. Orders ripple outward. The Hebrews' burdens multiply. They are forced to make bricks without straw, their work becoming harsher, more grueling under the blazing sun. Hands strain in mud, overseers shout, and the exhausted workers collapse, their despair growing as Pharaoh's cruelty deepens. Even the foremen, brought to plead before the king, find no mercy. Their frustration turns to anger, directed at Moses and Aaron, who now bear the weight of hope and disappointment alike. In the fading light of day, Moses stands alone, staff planted firmly in the sand. Around him, the people's anger, fear, and doubt are palpable. Yet even in silence, he searches for guidance, grappling with the enormity of the task and the enormity of God's plan. Night falls. Beneath the vast canopy of stars, Moses kneels in the quiet desert, whispering a prayer to the unseen God. Though the path ahead is steep, uncertain, and fraught with pain, he reaches for courage. Even in oppression, even in fear, divine presence remains subtle, steadfast, and full of promise. The struggle has only begun, but so too has the story of deliverance. Moses' mission will demand patience, faith, and strength far beyond his own. But with God, even the impossible will begin to unfold.
Night blankets the desert in silence. Beneath a vast sky filled with countless stars, Moses kneels alone in the sand. His cloak moves softly in the cool wind as his weary face turns toward heaven. The burden of leadership weighs heavily on him. The people suffer more than before. Pharaoh's heart remains unyielding. In the stillness of the night, Moses pours out his anguish in prayer. But with the first light of dawn, something shifts. Golden sunlight spills across the desert hills, touching the sand with warmth and color. Moses rises slowly from prayer and grips his staff with renewed resolve. The same staff that once guided sheep through quiet valleys now stands as a symbol of divine authority. Then comes the voice of promise. Through the quiet morning air, God reminds Moses of a covenant far older than Egypt's power. The promise given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Israel has not been forgotten. Their suffering has been seen, their cries have been heard, and the time of deliverance is drawing nearer. Moses listens intently, hope returning to his eyes. The path ahead remains difficult, but the promise is clear. God will bring his people out from under the weight of slavery and lead them toward freedom. As the sun rises over the labor camps of the Hebrews, families begin another weary day. Dust fills the air as exhausted workers gather near their tents and small cooking fires. Years of oppression have worn down their spirits. Hope feels distant. Yet Moses stands before them and speaks with passion. He proclaims the promise of God, the promise of rescue, redemption, and a future beyond Pharaoh's chains. But the people struggle to believe. Their faces show exhaustion, grief, and doubt. The weight of slavery has hardened their hearts. Aaron moves among them with calm words, encouraging them gently, reminding them that faith must sometimes survive even when hope feels fragile. Still, the mission must continue. Moses and Aaron walk once more toward Pharaoh's palace as the great city of Egypt rises before them. Towering gates, massive temples, and gleaming statues declaring the power of an empire that believes itself unshakable. Guards watch carefully as the brothers enter the grand throne hall. Beneath towering columns and golden figures, Moses speaks with steady courage, delivering the command of God. The court falls silent. Pharaoh sits unmoved upon his throne, his gaze cold and distant. With a dismissive gesture, he ends the audience and sends them away. Outside the palace gates, Moses pauses, gripping his staff as doubt briefly crosses his face. But Aaron places a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The promise still stands. As the sun sets over the Nile, Moses looks across Egypt, knowing the struggle has only just begun.
The sun rises over the ancient land of Egypt as Moses and Aaron walk once more toward Pharaoh's palace. Along the Nile stand towering temples and colossal statues of gods and kings, symbols of a civilization that believes its power is eternal. Egypt is the greatest empire of its time. Its armies are strong, its cities wealthy, and its ruler, Pharaoh, is worshipped not only as king, but as a living god. Yet two men now stand against that power. Moses and Aaron carry a message from the God of Israel, the God who created heaven and earth. Their command is simple but dangerous. Let the people go. Inside the throne hall, the court gathers. Priests of the Egyptian gods stand beside nobles and royal guards as Moses and Aaron approach across the polished stone floor. Pharaoh sits upon his throne beneath towering pillars, a ruler believed to hold divine authority over the land. But the authority Moses speaks with comes from somewhere higher. Aaron steps forward and throws the staff onto the floor. Before the entire court, the wooden rod twists and transforms into a living serpent. In Egypt, this sign carries deep meaning. The cobra is a sacred symbol of royal power, worn on Pharaoh's crown as a protector of the throne. Yet here, the serpent does not represent Pharaoh's authority. It represents the power of God confronting it. Pharaoh responds with confidence. He summons the magicians of Egypt, men trained in secret arts and temple rituals. They cast their staffs, and they too become serpents. For a moment, the miracle seems matched. But then, Aaron's serpent moves forward and swallows the serpents of the magicians. The message is unmistakable. Egypt's power may imitate, but it cannot overcome. Still, Pharaoh refuses to listen. The Egyptians even worship the river as a god named Happy, believing it brings. The next morning, Moses meets Pharaoh beside the Nile River. The Nile is the beating heart of Egypt. Every field, every harvest, every city depends on its waters. The Egyptians even worship the river as a god named Happy, believing it brings life and blessing to the land. But Moses delivers a warning. If Pharaoh will not release the Israelites, the Nile itself will testify to God's power. Aaron raises the staff and strikes the water. At first, the river ripples quietly. Then the color begins to change. The flowing waters turn deep red. Fish die and float upon the surface. The river that once sustained Egypt now carries the stench of death. Panic spreads along the riverbanks. People drop their water jars as they realize the Nile can no longer give life. Even the water stored inside homes turns to blood. Priests and villagers dig desperately along the banks, searching for clean water beneath the sand. Yet Pharaoh sees the plague and turns away. His heart remains hardened. For 7 days the Nile flows crimson through Egypt, but this first plague is more than a disaster. It is a declaration. The God of Israel is confronting the gods of Egypt, and the battle has only begun.
Moses stood before Pharaoh once more, declaring solemnly, "Thus says the Lord, tomorrow frogs shall overrun the land." By the Nile, Aaron raised his staff, and dark ripples spread across the water, trembling under God's command. From every bank and marsh, frogs swarmed, leaping into fields, streets, and marketplaces, filling the air with endless croaks. Even the royal palace could not escape. Frogs jumped across marble floors and silk cushions, driving Pharaoh to frustration as he summoned Moses, yet could not silence the relentless chorus. Outside, beneath the open sky, Moses lifted his hands in prayer, calling on God to lift the plague. Soon the land was strewn with lifeless frogs, a stark reminder of divine power. Aaron struck the dust of the earth, and from it rose swarms of gnats, biting and buzzing over soldiers and citizens alike, forcing even the Egyptian magicians to step back and declare, "This is the work of God." But Pharaoh's pride remained unyielding as dark clouds of flies filled homes and marketplaces, making life unbearable. Yet in Goshen, the Hebrew land remained peaceful and untouched, while Pharaoh offered compromise only to secretly plot defiance, proving again that God's hand shapes history in ways no heart can resist.
The confrontation between Moses and Pharaoh grows more intense as God continues to reveal his power over Egypt. Once again, Moses and Aaron stand before Pharaoh and deliver the command from the Lord, "Let my people go, so they may worship me." But Pharaoh refuses to listen. God announces another warning. A deadly plague will strike the livestock of Egypt: horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats. Yet God makes a clear distinction. The animals of the Israelites will remain untouched. The next day, the plague spreads. Animals collapse in fields and barns, and Egypt's agriculture and wealth suffer a devastating blow. But in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites live, not a single animal dies. Pharaoh sends officials to investigate, and they confirm the truth. Even with this clear sign, Pharaoh's heart remains stubborn. God commands Moses to take soot from a furnace and throw it into the air before Pharaoh. As the ashes scatter across Egypt, painful boils break out on people and animals. Even the Egyptian magicians can no longer stand before Moses because their bodies are covered with sores. Still, Pharaoh refuses to listen. Then, Moses warns that a violent storm is coming. A hailstorm unlike anything Egypt has seen. God instructs that anyone who fears him should bring their servants and animals indoors. Some Egyptians shelter themselves, but others ignore the warning. When Moses lifts his staff, thunder crashes, lightning flashes, and massive hailstones fall. Crops are destroyed, trees are shattered, and the land is devastated. Yet once again, Goshen is spared. Pharaoh summons Moses and admits, "I have sinned." The Lord is right. Pray that the thunder and hail will stop. Moses prays, the storm ends. But when the danger passes, Pharaoh hardens his heart again and refuses to let the Israelites go. Despite the devastation, Pharaoh still refuses to release the Israelites. God tells Moses to return, explaining that these signs are meant not only to free his people, but to show future generations his power. Moses and Aaron warn Pharaoh. If he refuses to let God's people go, tomorrow a swarm of locusts will cover Egypt. These will not be ordinary insects. They arrive in numbers never seen before, filling houses, covering the ground, and devouring everything that survived the hailstorm. Even Pharaoh's officials grow afraid. They plead with him, asking how long Moses will bring disaster, and urging him to let the Israelites go and worship their God, reminding him Egypt is already ruined. Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron back, saying they may go, but asks who will go. Moses answers that everyone must go, young and old, sons and daughters, with their flocks and herds, because the whole nation will celebrate a festival to the Lord. Pharaoh refuses and insists only the men may go. Angry, he drives Moses and Aaron away. God instructs Moses to stretch out his hand over Egypt. An east wind blows across the land through day and night. By morning, locusts swarm in huge numbers, covering the ground and devouring every remaining plant left after the storm. Nothing green remains anywhere in Egypt. In desperation, Pharaoh calls for Moses and admits, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Please forgive me this once and pray that this plague will be taken away." Moses prays, and God sends a strong west wind that sweeps the locusts into the Red Sea. But Pharaoh hardens his heart once more and refuses to let the Israelites go.